You're the lady, you're the lady, you're the lady, do, 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 do. You're the lady, you. Hey, Alex.
Hello.
We're welcome to the LP Movie Club. We're here to talk about Third Man on the Mountain, starring a young James MacArthur and a mountain.
And Janet Munro. Where are you going? Leaving the show. We just started.
Someone wanted to go outside.
Well, Third Man on the Mountain, it's a film about three basketball players who try and climb the Matterhorn and get sidetracked by an abominable snowman on their way.
And then at the top, Goofy keeps talking about old lady because he goes, older lady, older lady, older lady, who?
And then also Baby New Year, when they get to the top, is like smoking a cigar and decides to slide down to Sleeping Beauty Castle.
Yeah, fun fact, they've discovered there's a wire there and James MacArthur just launches into Tomorrowland Terrace. No, wait. So this movie, this is the first time I've sat all the way through it. And it was always the movie that inspired the Matterhorn attraction, right? Despite the fact they both opened in 1959. And you really can't separate it. I think on its own, it's so early in sort of the Disney live action world that, you know, it's more akin to sort of those, you know, like Rob Roy pictures. It's not the Parent Trap or anything like, you know, where Disney kind of got into their family comedy groove. It's more of an excuse, I think, to spend money in Europe after the war.
Yeah, this was right around the time like Shaggy Dog was made, which kind of kickstarted that genre for Disney.
And definitely, you know, this is at the tail end of those UK produced films. Not that this was in the UK, but Europe produced films. But you know, the sort of open secret was it was really just a way to justify sending his team to the Matterhorn, so they could research the Matterhorn and build the Matterhorn. At Disneyland. Kind of
you
like
could also call it the Citadel.
Yeah. So it's kind of like how in 10 Weeks Away at the Circus, like that just allowed him to buy all the circus stuff for Disneyland.
Toby Tyler.
Yeah, that's same thing, right?
As it's more cool. It's the full title. I mean, most people just say Toby Tyler, and then in parentheses it's or, 10 Weeks with the Circus. And you prefer to call it or 10 Weeks with the Circus instead of Toby Tyler. But the or shouldn't be there either. It would either be 10 Weeks with the Circus.
Yeah, no, I would say 10 Weeks with the Circus, as I said, as I should say. But on the whole, it's not a bad movie. It's just more pretty than it is plot driven. I mean, you know, like he's obviously going to get up there. The title's weird because it just means that he's not the guide, he's not the climber, he's like the assistant. So he's the
there's one moment where they say the line, like, who's the third man on the mountain? But that comes in Act 3. Like, so all of Act 1 and Act 2, you're like, what does the title of this mean?
And I always presumed he was like the third person to climb it. No, it's just like he's the apprentice.
There's two men on the mountain and then there's a third.
Right.
And that's the boy.
So I don't know why they picked that title, but
yeah,
you know, it's definitely so you see the Matterhorn in that, you know, the Citadel, the peak of the Matterhorn that we know from the park. And, you know, one, you realize that's what it looks like without holes in it. And without a bobsled ride around the side of it. But I can't help but see that mountain and think Disneyland.
Now, the book that inspired the movie was called Banner in the Sky, which I guess as a title is probably a little more confusing because the banner in the sky that it's referring to is the flag the shirt, the dad's shirt that gets hung up on the top of the mountain. So Banner in the Sky probably isn't a great title for it either. But if you were to give it a better title,
they set that up in the beginning in his dream sequence.
They do, yeah, with the dream sequence. That's true. I wonder at what point they decided to call it Third Man on the Mountain, and if while filming it, like, did the screenplay say Banner in the Sky? Like, was it like some marketing guy was like, Banner in the Sky is not a great film title. We should call it Third Man on the Mountain. You know, they were all smoking.
I don't know. Like, I also like the chef character, who I feel like he's like the first in the live action Disney Coots that like that, you know, the stereotypical kind-hearted but brash old guy who ends up mentoring the younger characters and ends up having a heart of gold, but he's kind of silly and goofy too at the same time.
Did they not know Ed Wynn existed at this point?
I don't know that Ed Wynn would make a lot of sense in the sort of Switzerland.
Nor does he make a lot of sense in those Callaways, but he's there anyway.
Yeah, well, they obviously would have known he was around because it's a 59. Alice in Wonderland was 50.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he had already worked for Disney. That's not being silly.
But, yeah, it's... you see sort of the transition. Like, to me, this is like the intermediary movie from the sort of action-adventure films that they started with. You know, take
20K, Treasure Island.
Yeah, and then into the sort of more silly.
Although they did still, I mean, they still made these kinds of films into the 60s. They just slowed down production of them. Like, Ten Who Dared.
I feel like a lot more of them ended up going. They still made them, but like it was more of a Disney Channel, not Disney Channel, Wonderful World of Disney, you know, anthology shows. Like when they started putting more of the action stuff, and they would release them out. And there's still a few. I mean, but the run they had of like Shaggy Dog, Absent-Minded Professor, you know, which were originally designed for TV, but you know those films, and where they could use a little bit more special effects. Obviously, there's tons of like invisible special effects in this movie, you know,
a lot of
matte paintings, and you know, obviously they're not actually climbing the Matterhorn, but you know, I think they finally they realize they should embrace their wizardry, you know, for lack of a better term, you know, the Disney special stuff. So, you know, Flubber and transforming a boy into a dog, and the sodium nitrate process for Parent Trap, and you know, obviously combining live action animation and things like Mary Poppins and others. And, you know, and also when, you know, those sort of broad musicals like Happiest Millionaire, you know, not that all of these films were super successful, but to me, those have a much longer lasting legacy. Then I feel like if Third Man on the Mountain didn't inspire the Matterhorn, it would be that, you know, we would be talking about it like we talk about Smith or something like that.
Light in the Forest.
Right. But what do you think of the movie?
I like it. I had forgotten how good it was because I hadn't seen it in so long. I will say its biggest problem is being quite forgettable. You know, after time goes on, this is one that doesn't really stay with you as much. When you're actually watching it, though, I mean, it has its peaks and valleys, pun intended. But it's, I mean, I guess its biggest problem is pacing. Its second biggest problem is stakes. I mean, it's a boy who's really trying to live up to his family's name and almost sort of avenge his father's legacy. His father died trying to climb the Citadel. And so he's trying to almost make it up to his dad. If I can get your shirt on that mountain, it means your death wasn't in vain. And, you know, you kind of the plot deals with his family's clout having been diminished. You know, and the mom keeps saying, like, you'll only ever be just a guide. Like, that's all you'll ever amount to, as if that's not a worthy way of living. You know, and he's kind of like, I really want to follow in my dad's footsteps and make this happen. I would say it also gets kind of muddied a little bit. It's very much the Disneyism, but the whole like Janet Munro character, the little love side plot thing, kind of slows everything down to a point where it really does get slow, and there's these long moments where it feels like nothing's moving, the story's not progressing. A Yeti would have been nice. It would have been fun.
I think he's a good point. It's like, I mean, obviously the Matterhorn didn't open with the Yeti, but once they added that element, there's been sort of this like mystery to the Matterhorn, in the attraction that is nowhere near. I mean, this movie,
because originally it was just you ride up in a bobsled and you ride down,
right?
With all the twists and turns.
To say that the movie inspired the attraction or the attraction was based off the movie is very much a stretch. I know it's one of those fun facts, but there's nothing about the ride that relates to this movie except the Matterhorn, the mountain itself, and there's nothing about what the ride has become as it's evolved over the years is just not even present there. So I think as someone who grew up with the post 70s Matterhorn, you almost feel like there's no mystery to the mountain, really, right? Like, it's dangerous, but it doesn't have that. You kind of expect there to be some sort of quasi supernatural element.
I would say there is a little bit. There's the ledge, what do they call it? The fortress. And then he finds the chimney that he can squeeze through. And that part does almost have a bit of a mysticism. You almost feel like, maybe there was a little bit of divine intervention from his father, leading him to it and, making it just so that he could get up to, make it possible to even get to the top. I would say that part has a little bit of mysticism to it, but you're right. The rest of it, really doesn't. The other thing I was going to say, you mentioned that a lot of these films, even though they were made for theater, were really like feeding into the anthology series. And the runtime of Third Man on the Mountain and even the pacing of the plot, it kind of has a midway point where you could break it and give it a day or a week. It really does feel like, even though it was this higher budget filmed in Switzerland production, it feels very much like Walt knew the majority of the people who were going to see it were going to see it through Wonderful World of Color.
Justin also brings up, there's the Lost Fathers theme, which is in a lot of Disney movies. There's a reason, right? It's an easy sort of plot device. Raya has the same situation, so it's not. And Kidder brings up the fun fact of Walt produced the film along with Bill Anderson. The one thing that was kind of surprising to me was the music is not done by the sort of normal Buddy Baker or
George Brown,
but not Sherman. So I felt the score was lacking. I felt like it was a little overdone, melodramatic at many points where it just didn't belong. And it was, I was weirdly, oddly cartoony, yet not being in a fun way either. I just, I just felt that, I guess it makes you appreciate Buddy Baker more than, otherwise. But also, the one thing I like about the fun fact I like about this movie is, I guess, Helen Hayes, James MacArthur's mother
in real life,
and noted actress, was visiting her son on the set in Switzerland. And so they wrote a little brief part for her, just, as a we would call it a Stan Lee type cameo now, but which is just a cute little, like, you just imagine little Helen Hayes visiting her son on his big movie and, getting thrown in and in a fun way. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that was a sweet moment, having the mom there. It's just a weird little cameo. I didn't know until you brought that up that Helen Hayes was James MacArthur's mom. Also, I'm most familiar with Helen Hayes like a decade and a half after this movie was made, when she did like Candle Shoe, One of Our Dinosaurs is Missing, her Disney work. And so I'm used to an older looking Helen Hayes. To me, Helen Hayes is like a little old lady.
You actually saw a show at the Helen Hayes Theater in New York.
We've seen 2 shows there, haven't we?
Yeah, at least. Yeah, okay, yeah, 2. So, do you think of like one of our dinosaurs is missing every time you go see a movie there?
I imagine it's the skeleton that's in the closet of that theater.
Well, you know what happened to the skeleton from that movie?
Yes, it ended up in Star Wars. fun. One of our dinosaurs is missing factoid.
That's
factoid not on Disney Plus.
And then anything in one of our dinosaurs is missing.
Mm-hmm. Which that's not on Disney Plus yet. We only just got Third Man on the Mountain though, so maybe they're pacing their time. I wonder if there's like an algorithm of like a fraction of the amount of time the films were made that are missing, and in which we'll get them, because this is fairly early on in the Disney canon. But we still don't have like Rob Roy or Sword in the Rose. So,
but it's interesting. We just got a couple interesting titles. Next week you've got Island on Top of the World.
Yes,
which was
the recommended film when you finish this. Right. Like what does Disney Plus pop up? And with this, because there's no end credits, it actually pops up like just before the end appears on the screen, and then it says watch Island at the Top of the World. This is very true. Yes, one of our dinosaurs is missing. We'll probably never see the light of day on Disney Plus, along with Devil and Max Devlin and some of those films.
Why? I haven't seen it.
It has some objectionable content. It's been a long time since I've seen it, so I don't want to misquote it, but there are issues by today's standards. It would need a filmmaker introduction explaining the times in which it was made, or at least a warning on the screen letting you know for 5 seconds that what you're about to see might contain what makes the red men red, or a we are Siamese.
We do have, but we also have like Mark Twain and me there now.
That is really cool. Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet, but I'm excited that they're diving into some of the TV content and bringing that forward. I am especially nostalgic for the Wonderful World of Disney late 90s films. They brought on all the DCOMs, but we don't get things like My Date with the President's Daughter or Model Behavior, Murder, She Purred, Safety Patrol, those kinds of films.
I would love someone to do like a book of the 90s made for TV movies. Because,
can I volunteer to write that book?
Because when Disney bought ABC in 1995, like one of the things they did is brought back The Wonderful World of Disney to ABC. And even before then, ABC has something called like, I want to say it was the Sunday night family movie. And so that's where like a lot of like the Love Bug remakes were and things. And they're forgotten in time because they're not quite DCOMs. Like, so they don't come up like when Disney Channel does their retrospectives, but they're sort of lost to time. And the Tower of Terror is like the one that has lasted because
Tower of Terror, the Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella with Brandy and Whitney Houston, the remake of Annie, mostly the musicals, Geppetto.
Yeah, but I always put those like in a different category. Geppetto, I don't think is name it, but those big like 1 year musicals were obviously bigger deals. But it had like, it was the Tooth Fairy.
Yeah, Toothless.
Toothless
with Kirstie Alley. Such a good one.
Safety Patrol. I'm trying to remember some of there was Tower of Terror.
My Date with the President's
Daughter.
Oh,
yeah. So there was just, and then Wonderful World of Disney quickly devolved into just being like Annie plus, just Disney movies that are rerunning on TV. And I miss the kind of, now there would be Disney Plus originals, and I hate to say like back in the day because there's so much great content today that, whatever, but.
And the quality of the Disney Plus originals is mostly higher than the quality of those movies.
But I could totally see My Day with a President's Daughter, if it was made today, to be on Disney Plus, like a Disney Plus original.
Oh yeah, Totally. And that's one that a lot of people are asking for. Like, I don't see people like rallying behind Safety Patrol and Murder, She Purred. Like the Ricky Lake team isn't like get Murder, She Purred on Disney Plus. I would like to have it, but I'm just saying. But you definitely see people asking for My Date with the President's Daughter. I think in large part because it played so much on Disney Channel that a lot of people thought it was a DCOM. That in Model Behavior got a lot of replay.
And Life Size was
also a Wonderful World of Disney movie, which is not on Disney Plus, despite Life Size 2 being on Disney Plus, which was made for Freeform, and I object to because there are some really not kid-friendly elements to Life Size 2. Whereas Life Size 1, no objectionable content. Tyra Banks no, it's not Tyra Banks. It's the main girl in Life Size 2 who's not Lindsay Lohan grown up and recast for some weird reason. And she calls a middle school girl a thought. THOT, the acronym. You can look up what that means, and it's not appropriate that she calls a middle schooler that. Anyway, back to Third Man on the Mountain.
No, not at all.
No, not at all. Not at all appropriate that she calls somebody that.
I found in an article, top 10 outrageous words millennials mean.
Yeah. So anyway, that wasn't an okay moment. Also, I really object to what's his name, the celebrity gossip blogger Perez Hilton having a role in it. Playing not Perez Hilton, but like you do not give Perez Hilton an acting gig and pretend like everything's okay. He was very problematic. Anywho, Life Size 2, that's on Disney Plus, not the movie we're talking about today.
So when you woke up today and you saw your plan for Laughing Place, did you think somehow the Third Man on the Mountain conversation would turn to Life Size 2?
Nope, wouldn't have been on my bingo card. But back to Third Man on the Mountain. Why do you think people should check it out? If you're recommending people go watch it on Disney Plus, what's your reason for it?
I think it's from a time when Disney didn't just make tons of movies, live action movies, and it's an important stepping stone. I don't think this movie is great. Don't get me wrong. But I think if you're a Disney fan, it's an important step from Treasure Island to where Disney got to, not only from their film output, but from their, Wonderful World of Disney, or Disney Anthology, or whatever you want to call it, output. You can definitely see this movie crossing. It's sort of like the Meet the Robinsons. Like it has one foot in sort of adventure storytelling and one foot in I would say is sort of classic Disney live action. I mean, there's so many matte paintings, obviously, for so many good reasons in this movie. And I'm not saying that matte paintings are obvious, but there's obviously Peter Ellenshaw did great work on this movie. And even if it's just to check out Peter Ellenshaw's work, I mean, there's nothing where the mountain is not present that's not beautiful. And so it's a beautiful film. It might not hold up from a storytelling perspective to modern sensibilities in terms of pacing and things like that. But I think as a Disney historian, not that I am one, but if you want to see the evolution of, at a time when Walt Disney was involved at some point with basically everything, you can see this as an important gateway into, the Disney movies of the 60s.
Good, accurate assessment. Can we also take a moment to talk about James MacArthur, Disney's first sex symbol?
Sure.
Because there's like a weird clause in James MacArthur's contract, I think, based on just the evidence of the body of work that he did with Disney, that he must have his shirt removed at some point in every film he does for them. Because even going back to I think his first Disney film was Light in the Forest, which he maybe wears a shirt for 5 minutes of. Swiss Family Robinson gets him out of his shirt. This movie gets him out of his shirt. They're somebody at Disney in this era was like, he's hot. We need to get him out of his shirt. And it's like the equivalent of like in the superhero movies now. Like you don't make a Thor movie without a shirtless scene. I think Thor Ragnarok famously like forgot to include one and then did it in pickups because they were like, oops, we forgot to include that scene and we need one. I just think it's funny.
Yeah, even if you like Google image search, he is often not wearing a shirt.
Yeah, and what's funny is I bought from the Universal Studios Video on Demand service a movie called The Truth About Spring, I think it's called, because it had Haley Mills and James MacArthur, made during a time when both were on their Disney contract and loaned out to Universal. And it's not a good film, but that's another one where it's like, I think in his introductory scene, he has a shirt on and then it's off. He was on Hawaii Five-0 too. Was he commonly shirtless on Hawaii Five-0?
I don't know. I mean, he was much older.
Was that just his thing?
Well, I don't. I mean, he also played a cop, and I mean, you've heard Bookham Dano, right?
Yeah,
he's Dano,
right? I just never watched the show. Like I know culturally what it is.
I just know. I just remember like the opening credits where like they all turn their head to like, I don't know, get in the opening credits. But
did he do a Murder, She Wrote?
Oh,
I feel like everyone from this era ended up on Murder, She Wrote, sometimes like multiple times as different characters.
Let's see. Google Hooray for Homicide.
That's the episode of Murder, She Wrote he was in.
He played. Let's see here. I gotta find him.
There's just a handful of guarantees. One of which is Disney stars. One of which is that Disney stars of this era at some point reconnected with Angela Lansbury on Murder, She Wrote. And they probably also had a 3-episode arc on The Love Boat when you're IMDb surfing.
So, yeah, you're probably right. And then they all kind of came back together for Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm.
John Astin was also in this episode.
Oh, wow.
From Mr. Boogedy fame.
And Freaky Friday fame.
Yeah, sure. But now I just want to go on Universal Studios backlot tour.
We're gonna soon. We're getting back to business out here in California. We'll be bobsledding now that the bobsleds don't break your back again. We'll be probably bobsledding soon.
Yeah, well, the bobsleds are not opening with the park, but
Matterhorn's not going to be open?
No. They're probably just using it as a filming location for the inevitable Disney Plus remake of Third Man on the Mountain.
And then that remake, it's 3 basketball players who decide to climb the mountain and then get into trouble with legendary Abominable Snowman.
I kind of feel like now would be a great time to make like that movie. I mean, not necessarily Third Man on the Mountain, but like a Matterhorn movie.
Well, they're gonna get
Yeti and all that.
Yeah, they're gonna get to the point with the animated remakes. They're going to get to the point where they run out of the theme park attractions to harvest from, and we're going to get that basketball players climbing the Matterhorn movie. And I think we'll get that maybe before we get live action Aristocats.
But they still haven't remade Operation Dumbo Drop.
Well, that's a live action one. We don't necessarily remake all the live action. What Disney likes to do, for the most part, is remake live action movies from other studios as Disney movies, and then every once in a while remake The Parent Trap and Freaky Friday.
Well, it's funny because they make live action movies of animated films, but then with Fox movies, they're going to make animated remakes of live action films.
Yep.
So that's Third Man on the Mountain, one of the more forgettable Disney movies, if it wasn't for the Matterhorn bobsled attraction. Next week, we've got another movie that is sort of almost more famous for its theme park connection than it is as a movie of itself, of the island at the top of the world. You'll be here with Cole to talk about that. And I'm sure Disneyland Paris will come up plenty.
Disneyland Paris will come up, and the I guess theme park that never got built in California will come up.
So once again, another attraction, another franchise that's more famous for its film, for its ride than its movie. So
is Atlantis also more famous for its non-built ride than it is as a movie?
maybe. And don't forget, tomorrow, Mike will be at Downtown Disney, kind of getting us ready for a last visit before the parks open. And then we have Barely's Necessities at 4 p.m. and Disney Trivia Live at 7:30. Also, Mike will have reviews of 2 new Star Wars books coming up at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So a lot going on. Actually, there's a lot going on like for the next 2 weeks. So stick with us, buckle up, and we'll have some fun. So see you later, everybody.